It is good to be here with you. It's good to spend a little time with you this morning. I hope everybody had a good time at the reception last night, and I know there's a larger reception this evening. But I think this is one step in our journey, right? How many of you have actually traveled so far this year, post-pandemic, right? That is beautiful to see, beautiful to see. And every time we do it, we learn something new, right? We have changed and we've evolved. Some of you are probably getting on an airplane this weekend, going to France for ILTM. And it's good to see our industry moving forward. The one thing I do notice every time I get on a plane, or every time I travel to an event, is that I learn something new. And it's about the evolution of where we're going next. Part of that is going to be defined by how we sort of interact. Part of it's going to be defined by, our vision of the future. There's a lot of disruptive technology. There's a lot of change that's happening for us. And we're all in the middle of it. We will look back at some point and say, where were you when? What were you doing when that happened? And you will all look back and you will tell the stories that you were in the middle of it. You were defining it and you were making it as it happened. Nobody knows what tomorrow looks like. I'm sitting here right now trying to find out what the restrictions are going to look like and how will I get to France on Sunday. And then more importantly, how will I return from France the following week? And if I don't make it home for the holidays, that's a bigger problem. So imagine that, put that in your head, right? You've got that role that you're playing right now where you're rebuilding the industry. And you'll tell that story in 10 years and you'll look back and think, wow, that was the craziest of times. And those of us that have been through, whether it was 9/11 or you've been through the financial crisis of 2008, we all have those stories and we put the pieces back together. And we will, because travel is innate. It's something that we all love and it's something we have passion about. I had a milestone this week. Yesterday, flying somewhere over Kansas, I crossed the 3 millionth mile actually flown on United Airlines. And I had a surreal moment when it happened. First of all, I imagined that would have happened about a year ago. And I sort of thought, when this happens, maybe there'll be balloons and confetti guns and all kinds of things will happen when I show up at the airport. And none of that happened, none of it. But it did have me thinking a little bit about this discussion today, because in the midst of what I thought was a moment that was important to me, not so important to my wife, badge of honor not so much for her, but it had me reflecting on the career and the journey, because there are friends and relationships and acquaintances and just a journey that has been built over time. It's something that became very important to me. So this was a special moment. It wasn't special because I'm happy about points or miles. I don't really care about any of that. What I did care about was all of the relationships that had been built over time and a career that I was quite proud to be part of. And at one point, one of the flight attendants came back and she sort of quietly knelt down and started talking to me, and she said, Mr. Gabaldon, it's nice to have you with us today, and the pilot wanted to make sure, he can't come back today, but he wanted to make sure that, we know that today you're crossing your 3 millionth mile. And 3 million miles is a long way. It's a lot of time on an airplane. And she just took a moment, a couple of minutes to engage with me. Right? And everything you hear when you get on the airplane is, if you don't wear your mask, we're going to arrest you. Right? We might actually land the plane or throw you out at 25,000 feet when we descend. We're here to serve you, right? But we don't have anything to serve you. We're happy we're here, but please sit in your seat and be quiet. Right? I'm having fun at their expense. They have to deal with it, and so do we. But the fact that she took a moment to come to me and kneel down and talk for 2 or 3 minutes. And she asked, I know this is hard on your family. We appreciate your business. You're helping us continue to build our industry. Thanks for being, just really nice, kind, genuine things. And it left an impression on me. And it had me reflecting on today's conversation, which is about culture, right? And it'll be brief, but I think it's something that as an industry, as we rebuild and as we grow, it's an important part that we reflect on. Oh, there it is. Brief moment of panic when I couldn't find the clicker. It had me reflecting on what we're going to talk about today. And I'll get to that. So as I was introduced, I'm head of our luxury brands, our luxury portfolio at Marriott International. We have 8 great luxury brands. I've been part of this organization for going on 30 years in a variety of roles in sales and marketing, brand. I've been an operator for 7 years. Also stepped outside of Marriott for a while and ran Auberge Resorts Collection as the chief operating officer for a couple of years. And so happy to be back and having the opportunity to run this great portfolio of brands. And there's 8 of them, and we engage in them in a variety of ways. But there's over 460 luxury hotels that we operate in 65 countries with about 200 hotels, luxury hotels in the pipeline. So a real breadth of sort of portfolio and activity to think about around the world. But we're not here to talk about that today, and that'll probably be the last thing, or maybe there'll be one other thing I talk about in relation to Marriott. But as we get to the idea of culture, and we think about those moments that inspire people to do things, I think about it in terms of how does that generate profitability? And I'm going to get there because I think it's an important part of the equation, but I'm going to build the equation from the bottom up. And so bear with me as a moment, if you would. What is a great brand? These are all great brands. You know them. You've engaged with them. You may drive one. You may wear one. You may have one in your pocket. Probably most of you do. I'll call out the probably most overused brand, which is Apple. Probably half of you have that phone, or maybe more of you have that phone. And Apple is a code. Apple's a promise. Apple is something that says to the consumer, it says something about innovation. It says something about technology. But it also makes a different promise to you. It makes a promise to you about style and design and status. All of you know that when you open your Apple Watch or when you open your Apple iPhone box, right? How does that box feel? You pull it open and it smooths out nice and slowly. It's got that great feel to it. You pull it. It's kind of a point of pride. You look at your phone and you go, yeah, that looks good. It's going to feel good on me. And you lay it on the table. Some of you probably kept the box that your iPhone came in. You know who you are, right? I have 3 of them stacked up in my closet. I have no idea what I'm going to do with them and why they're there, but from time to time I open it again because it has that nice, soft, sucking feeling, right? And I put it back and I put it back on the shelf. And so the iPhone 3 box that's still sitting there after 10 years it's still fun to open, right? But it says there's multiple points and codes that a brand puts forward. And there's ways that those are built, right? They're built on authenticity, they're built on stories, they're built on technical capabilities, but they're also built on something that's very special. They're built on the people that are inside of those brands. I won't take you through all these stories. You know them and you recognize them, but you know there's something special when you see the carriage or when you see the star or when you see the apple or whatever your favorite brand is. It says something to you. But I want to talk about one of the elements that is slightly different than the traditional items you think about when you think about a brand. Most of us think about the codes, the design, the style, the technical capabilities, the promise, the consistency, but there's an element to that, which is the culture that's inside of those brands. The only thing that allows a brand to sustain and survive, particularly things like pandemics and recessions and plagues and wars, is its people. And their ability to know what they're expected to do. And when I talk about brands, by the way, I'm not talking about, yes, we have a portfolio of large major brands. I showed you Mercedes and others. Some of you work for large hospitality brands. Some of you work for independents. Many of you run hotels. You have your own personal brand, but a brand is that promise, and you have to think about what creates that, whether it's an individual hotel, asset, or a hard brand that you might work for. But you know what it does for you? Is it gives you something that to me, in today's world, has become incredibly important. You're going to hear a lot, I think, over the next couple of days, and I was going through the list of speakers, and they're really impressive. I think you guys have joined a great conference here over the next couple of days. And by the way, I congratulate the organizers, because this is no small feat to pull this off in today's environment. So thank you, congratulations to you guys. You've got something well put together here. But I want you to start to think about something, which is as we rebuild our industry, my guess is 20% or so of the hospitality employees have left the industry. How hard is it to find employees today, right? It's getting a little bit better, but we're hiring tens of thousands of people every month, or at least we're trying to. If you look at the jobs that are opening, we're having to recraft our industry. So when you think about points of change, you think about the technology disruption, the distribution disruption, the operating models that are being disrupted today. We also disrupted the culture. We disrupted the purpose of being and working in the hospitality industry, which was about adventure and fun and relationships and travel and all of these things that people joined our industry for. That promise was broken. It was absolutely broken. No fault of ours, no fault of ours. An economic shock, a greater macro impact, but it's changed our industry, and we have to bring people back into our industry for us all to advance. for all of us to advance. So what is the purpose? Today, and over the last couple of years, 18 months maybe, the purpose has been survival. The purpose has been from, I remember February of 2020, we just came off of a general managers conference, and we were talking about how great the next year or year and a half looked. Many of you had that same conference, right? And then in 5 weeks, we we furloughed 92% of our employees, and the hotels were shut down. And then we immediately went to cash flow, PPP loans, survival mode, right? Employee benefits. What are we going to do? Unprecedented times. And we continued that for well over a year. And then we realized we're going to reboot our industry. And we started to do that. We lost employees. They didn't have a purpose. They moved to other industries. The purpose of culture, and the reason I speak on it today, is that I think it's that one of those levers we're going to reach up and pull. So you're going to take your operating model, you're going to fix that, you're going to change the way you do things. You're going to change your technology and the way you personalize services. You're all thinking about what are the new trends in food and beverage and culinary, and how's that going to attract guests and get them to pay a higher price point. The one I would remind you to think of is what culture are you building and what's the purpose of that culture. What I would tell you about the purpose of culture, in my years of experience with it, is that it is to give you a higher purpose. It is to give your employees a reason to be there. We are stuck in a commodity game right now. Wages are increasing, benefits are increasing, the price of every commodity associated with our business is increasing, and we have to find a better way to fight. We have to bring back a reason for people to be in our industry. You have to bring back a reason for them to be in your hotel or in your brand or in your business, and give them a higher reason to be at work. If it comes down to the paycheck, we will always lose. I hate to say that, but we will always lose if it comes down to, will you make more money being a housekeeper or a front desk agent or a reservation agent or a banquet server working at one of our hotels than working at Amazon or working at Target or working somewhere else? We just don't have the margins in our business to compete. And I think that will always be the case because we're so people intensive, right? So we have to think about why else are we inspiring them to be there. I'll give you a couple of examples. Wes Gordon, who's the creative director at Carolina Herrera, has a quote that I like. He says, a Carolina Herrera dress represents joy, happiness, laughter, and the people who make that product have to feel the same way too. Meaning they are inspired to do what they want their guests to feel. So a lot of what I'm talking about is the emotion, right? The connection, the personal aspect. Not the commodity, not the design, not the price, none of that. It's the irrational piece of what we do. A brand that I absolutely love, and in fact, somebody asked me this one day. They said, Chris, if you ever left the travel business, what would you do? Who would you work for? And one of the names that came right to my mind was Patagonia. And I have no idea how to do their business. I know nothing about it. But I love what they stand for, right? They are a company that is about sustainability. They are about conscious consumption. They're also about adventure. But what's interesting about their company, it was really built organically. And when the founders suggested the ways that they develop and hire people is they don't necessarily advertise for jobs and try to solicit people in traditional ways. They actually encourage their employees through their own network of friends, family, others that have like-minded thoughts and aspirations. Those are the ones they want to come in the company because they know they already have a culture of people that believe in their mission and their vision, and so they're trying to attract those people with similar aspirations. And that's what helps define them and helps give them a greater place in the industry. Patagonia lovers out there, any of you? I am. I have the jacket up in the room. I'm going to take this one off. I like this jacket, but I like my Patagonia better. I'm going to put it on, and I'm going to get on the airplane and fly home. It's actually not even the best technical gear. And it's actually not even the best design, but it has so many components, and those components are continued to be built and innovated on by people that share those same visions around adventure and consumption, sustainable consumption. Zappos is a brand I'm sure we relate to a lot in our industry, which is powered by service. I won't drain that out too much. I think you all know what Zappos is about. It certainly signifies quality, but customer service most importantly. But one of the things I find interesting about Zappos is they're so committed to their culture that if you're hired by Zappos, By the way, you've all done this, right? You've hired people. 4 days into it, you realize, uh-oh, Johnny's not working out. Johnny doesn't get it, and Johnny needs to go away. And you kind of hope Johnny goes away, but sometimes Johnny won't go away. And it's probably because Johnny faked his way into the job, and now Johnny knows he can't get another job. But Zappos is so serious about what's important to them that they're going to pay Johnny to go away. If you get into the training and you realize that these crazy freaks that have this culture at Zappos, this ain't for me, we're going to give you $2,000 to leave. Meaning we're going to help you make the transition, because it's more important to us to spend $2,000 today than to have $10,000, $100,000 worth of problems and mistakes down the road. And those are really hard to see, right? They're not always quantifiable, but they're there. That's how important they find their culture to be. A brand that I know and I'm very close to, I've worked on this brand for 20 years, the idea of genuine care and genuine comfort is something that's near and dear to the Ritz-Carlton brand. Some of you may be with the brand, some of you may be graduates of the brand. We spend a lot of time trying to make sure that people that come into that brand have that inside their hearts. We know that Ritz-Carlton is formal and sometimes can be stuffy, but at the true heart of that brand is something that's associated with deep, heartfelt feelings around really caring for individuals and caring for one another in the brand. And so that's very important, and it is at the root of the culture of that brand. So where does a strong culture take you? And now I'm going to move you into how does this impact your business, right? Because again, we're thinking about how do we recover and rebuild. Well, the one thing a culture does for you is it allows people to make decisions, right? If you've got a strong culture with a great purpose, and you understand what the North Star is and where you're going, right? The beauty of that is that your employees get to make decisions. They feel empowered to make decisions, and when they make the right decision, because they feel good about it, right? It increases retention and loyalty and customer experience and all the things that we strive for. But it gives them the North Star so they understand how to make a decision. If I'm solving for a customer issue, or I'm trying to help that customer deliver on a great experience today or tomorrow, whenever they're going to be with us, right? They have the guidance, and the guidance is built within them. If their guidance is genuine care, if their guidance is the power of service, if their guidance is sustainability, if their guidance is happiness and fun, right? They're smart enough to know what to do. No one ever delighted a guest by saying, let me check with my manager first, right? That's a terrible thing to have happen, right? But when the employee solves a problem, when the employee goes out of their way to really create an experience for you, that's when you know you've made an impact, and that's how you retain employees. So, we now know how to get there. The benefit is we make decisions. We empower people to do so. They love to make decisions because they feel good about themselves, and we want that to happen, particularly in our industry today. Now we have to live it. 6-7 weeks ago, we sat down for a conversation with Danny Meyer. I'm sure you all know Danny Meyer, founder of Union Square Hospitality. While he's famous for Gramercy Tavern, many of us enjoy Shake Shack, self included, 12 pounds of Shake Shack during COVID. But the beauty of Danny is that we sat down to talk about the trends of food and beverage, culinary, what's happening post-COVID, what are you looking at? Hour-long conversation, we got into it about 12 minutes, and we asked him, well, how are you dealing with employees today and finding the right talent? We spent the first 12 minutes on food and beverage, restaurants, bars, etc. And we spent the remaining 45 minutes on people and culture. And we didn't guide that. He did. And in fact, we tried to guide him back to culinary trends and beverage trends and that sort of thing, and he kept coming back to people. So while he's in the business of creating guest experiences, and he's known for his culinary, he's known for his innovation, it all kept coming back to his people. And it was interesting, he had two things that really resonated. There was a lot. I wish I would have recorded him. But one thing he said is, look, we spend a lot of time, and you do, on building hotels, designing bars, hiring the best architects, creating the great style that we have in our buildings, right? The physical product. He said that's the hardware. That's the skin. That's the beauty of the product. But the personality of the product is the software, and the software is the people. They're the ones that make it happen. They're the ones that deliver the Shake Shack experience. They're the ones that deliver the experience at Gramercy Tavern. They are the software that create and make the brands go. And he said this across the board, across all of his experience and all of his restaurant concepts that he's developed. That was his common thread. The second thing he said was, the only thing I really focus on is having someone with a high HQ. What's an HQ? And if you've read his book, you would know it's the hospitality quotient. So a hospitality quotient, meaning he wanted someone that felt they delivered great pride in their work by making someone else feel better. That's what he focused on. It was a beautiful story, and we could have spent hours talking with him, and at some point he probably would have started charging me a consulting fee. But by the way, this builds to your profitability. You've all spent all of your time managing cash flows, trying to figure out your PPP loans. How are you going to rebuild revenue? I would argue that you've got two sides of culture that ladder up to your profitability. And it's something that we have to rebuild as an industry, and I would encourage all of us to think about. We spend a lot of time on it. One, depending on who you ask, 60 to 80% of your cost in any operation is related to your employees. We've got wages and benefits, you've got associate relations, you've got retention, you've got acquisition of talent. You also have mistakes and breakdowns and rework and all the things that it takes to correct mistakes when employees don't do the right thing. So that's one side of the equation, right? The other side of the equation is something that we have some pretty good data on, and that is a guest that's more highly engaged is more likely to spend money with us, right? And in fact, generally our data will tell us that if you have a guest that is highly engaged, they will give us 10 to 40% more of their share of wallet on an annual basis. That's a really big number, right? And when you get that, you have lower acquisition costs. So that's one. The other side of it is how you manage the costs associated with those employees, which I just represented. Now, if you back that up, okay, a highly engaged customer is dependent upon a highly engaged employee delivering that experience. So if you think about highly engaged employees are not motivated by baseball tickets and barbecues and employee parking and employee of the month things. Those are all good. We should recognize people when they do a good job and call them out. It generates leadership. They're motivated by that higher purpose associated with culture. And you have people in your organizations that are cultural leaders. You should identify them. You should recognize them and bring them forward because they're the real stewards of your brand, whatever your brand might be. And the reality is they are the core DNA of that operating system that's producing the profit on the other side. Now, there are many, many models associated with how we're going to rebuild our industry. And again, new mix of sales, increase in leisure travel, decrease in business travel. What's going to happen with groups? We don't know. Are they going to be smaller? Are they going to be bigger? What's going to happen with weddings? International travel? We don't know yet. But you're going to have all these levers to pull. My suggestion is if you want to drive profitability in the long term, is that you think an awful lot going forward about re-engaging in the idea of culture and how that builds a sustainable business model for you and it drives profitability. I would even go as far to argue that the number one conversation we ought to have today is talent. The outcome of talent and culture and a strong identity and purpose is profitability, profitability being the scorecard. So I'll leave you with that thought. Inspiration and motivation is probably the most important thing we can do. We've got to bring people back into our industry, which I know we're all working hard to do. They have to have a reason to be back with us, and they have to have purpose so that they can achieve the goals with us. Ultimately, that is the guest experience. Ultimately, that's reduction in cost, and ultimately, that's higher revenues, which I know everyone in the room knows how to flow through to profitability. We've spent a lot of time on flow through over the last couple of years. So think about that. To me, it's a very personal topic. It's a business formula that I think has worked. And as you add in your mix of sales and you add in your operating model and as you add in your distribution strategy and everything else, I would suggest add in culture. Culture is a business strategy, and maybe think about it as you head into 22 and 23. So I hope you all have a great and wonderful conference. I don't know if we're doing questions or not. I think we're right at time. But anyway, I wish you much luck and success, and have a wonderful, wonderful couple of days here, and thank you for everything you do for travel, and appreciate your leadership. Take care.